Hey, welcome everybody to the Dynasty Pros weekend warm up with your hosts. I'm Brendan Booth. With me, as every week, is Mike Lindberg. We're here to hash out the news and injuries of the last week. We're going to give you our starts, sits, and streams. We're going to talk about our Studleys and Dudleys. It's going to be a good time. So hang out with us and let's do this. And let's do this, Mike.
Yeah, man. How has your week been?
A little good, a little bad. Uh, I didn't really like Tuesday morning going scrolling through all of my results over the weekend from all my games. I had one of the worst weeks I've ever had record wise in fantasy football. But it is what it is, and you take swings, and sometimes you hit it, and sometimes you miss it, and I seem to have been suffering a lot of misses the last few weeks. I go for high upside guys, and they're just not hitting yet. So things should get better. How about
Yeah, I'm
you?
hoping. Yeah, me too. I really had a tough week last week with just some of my calls I made, but also in my dynasty lineups, my starters, my sits, all that kind of stuff. Not the greatest way to end the week, but looking to regroup after that and head into this week with a little bit better of a demeanor. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and my girlfriend and I had our first cocktails on the balcony of the fall season, and I'm here with a little old fashioned. She made these little travel infusion bags with all the ingredients of an old fashioned. All you do is put the bag in the glass and add the whiskey, and cheers, everybody.
Cheers to you, my friend.
So what happened in news and injuries this week, Mike? Give me an update.
Well, Well, another crazy week is in the books. How about Devon A. Chan?
How
Wow.
about it?
Hopefully you didn't go up against him this week. A guy in my actual fishbowl scored 302 points with A. Chan on his bench. Nuts.
That's crazy.
Great. It
Okay,
is great.
now I'm going to throw this out there about a Chan. There's some controversy with the pronunciation of his name. We've been saying A Chain for a long time. There's also some controversy with the way that people pronounce Travis Etienne's last name. It's actually Etienne, and it's French Cajun. And I have a theory that it's the same last name, just spelled different ways. I think Etienne and Etienne are the same because it's not Etienne, it's Etienne. I think it's the same. I That's my theory. Anyway, sorry to sidetrack you.
No, all good, man. Encouraging that we came out of week 3 with less new injuries. We actually
Sure.
have more. We actually have more positive player news than negative this week, which is a great sign. A lot of players headed back into lineups this week. Like tonight, we have Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, David Montgomery, all returning to lineups. A huge boost for fantasy managers. I know there was a bunch of happy managers out there to hear that their key players are headed back from injury. How you feeling, Brendan? I know that you are one happy camper to see Aaron Jones back. How does that boost do for your fantasy lineups?
I thought it was going to be a great boost,
Yeah.
but at this point, we're watching, and right now we're just into the second half of Green Bay versus Detroit, and I have lost Luke Musgrave with a point on 6 different teams, and Aaron Jones I put back on all my all my starting lineups, and he has 15 yards maybe. So I felt really good. And now the Packers are getting absolutely waxed by this for real, true to life Detroit Lions squad.
Yeah, they look good tonight going into Lambeau and putting on a show. So the game's not quite over yet. There's still a good half of football left, so we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
headed into this week, Alvin Kamara set to return, and the Saints will lean the hell out of Kamara this week. A welcome addition to the backfield that's been pretty much a revolving door. With Garoppolo potentially out, Kamara will get as much work as he can handle. Hopefully,
Derek
he's
Carr.
in good. Oh, sorry, yeah, Derek Carr. My bad. I get those two confused at times. um, uh, hopefully, with this game should be slow paced and Kamara should benefit from it. I'd be looking at plugging Kamara in as a flex or even an RB2. He has a lot to prove, and I'm looking for him to come out of this one pretty hot. What do you think?
I think that was a personal shot at me with the Carr Garoppolo screw up, but yeah, uh, I was really hopeful for Condre Miller. I thought he was going to
Yeah,
have a couple weeks to really show what he could do, and he didn't do anything. He got out touched by Tony Jones last week, and I had egg on my face.
yeah.
I I put Condre Miller back on my bench. I'm waiting for his breakout, but he was supposed to do it before Kamara came back. Now Kamara's back, and he should be in everybody's lineups, even with Jameis Winston as his quarterback.
Yeah, it's a shame with Miller there. I was hoping he would have a chance to get in there before Kamara got back, but he just couldn't get healthy enough to get those touches, or he didn't have the backing of the coaching staff. So
Yeah, and they
um,
also went up against a buzzsaw run defense last week, so that didn't help.
it for sure. Cam Akers is set to make his Vikings debut. Crazy how it takes a team bringing in competition for a player to step up. But that's exactly what happened on Sunday with Alexander Madison for fantasy managers. Madison was good, but he'll surely be on a tight leash as he fumbled and had an important red zone drop. Madison is kind of one game away from Akers becoming relevant. What do you think on that?
I kind of agree, just because of the state of the NFL. Not that I would have any faith in either of them. The Vikings are kind of a mess at this point, and they're not really doing anything besides throwing the ball. So if you got Kirk Cousins and T.J. Hawkinson and Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, of course, go for it. But their backfield needs a little bit of help.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I agree. Um, Now with some injury news, unfortunately, Mike Williams was off to a great start in week 3, catching 7 passes for 121 yards and a touchdown. Williams was seen after the game in a leg brace, and ultimately he ended up tearing his ACL and is done for the year. Waiver wire darling Josh Palmer will be an immediate replacement for Williams. Quentin Johnson gets maybe a small boost, but I don't think he's quite ready for a big role, earning only 26% snap share to start the year. So Palmer has been a top 10 receiver on average when either Williams or Allen have been out. So I'd look for Palmer to have an important piece of this Charger offense moving forward.
Totally agree. Palmer is who he is, but he is going to have a little bit more of a snap share, and he should see a boost in his production, which hasn't been terrible. I looked at picking him up on a bunch of different waiver wires this week, and I was successful on some, and some people way outbid me. Uh, I like Palmer. I do have quite a few Johnston shares, but I wasn't planning on Johnston hitting until around the middle of the season, and I don't want to give out any spoilers. We'll get into that more later.
Yeah, I mean, Quentin Johnson, great talent. His profile coming in, this year was a work in progress, and he will be a work in progress. I mean, the Chargers weren't expecting to lose Mike Williams, so I think they thought in the future. I could see with some more reps and learning the playbook a bit, polishing off his route running. I could see him coming on stronger in the latter half and early into next year. I mean, he's the only thing that is, connected to Herbert long term. So, Quentin Johnson shares could be cheap right now for long term gain.
Yeah, I agree. Um, Again, I'll get into it later. I'm not really into buying rookie wide receivers to start the season. They tend to not break out until the second
Yeah.
half. This is a better opportunity for Quentin, and it's something that anybody who was drafting Quentin was saying was he's just a Keenan Allen and Mike Williams injury away. Half of that
Hmm.
has come true so far. Not many people saw Josh Palmer stepping up a little bit, but yeah, I'll say wait on Quentin a little bit, but have some hope.
Yeah. And he'll have his opportunities down the line. He'll have his shot to prove himself. Now,
Absolutely. He's got specific skills. The work in progress thing that you talked about, that a lot of that has to do with his hands, but as far as being a deep threat, being a high point 50-50 guy, he's got all that stuff in spades. It's just he needs to work on catching the ball away from his body and some of the teachable things. I read some scouting reports about his ability to get low when he gets in and out of breaks. He's got pretty flexible hips, even though it doesn't look like it when he's running. When he can dip pretty low and get in and out of breaks, so he's got the physical abilities that aren't teachable. He just needs to get through those teachable aspects of the game, and he'll be fine.
yeah, okay. And now, Derek Carr, not Jimmy Garoppolo, has an AC joint injury. Probably at least 1 week out, I'm assuming. Could be longer, depending on how severe it is. We're looking at Jamison Williams to come up again and fill in, most likely, in a conservative game plan. Yeah, I'm not expecting much out of that game.
No, I did pick up Jameis in a five quarterback only only league where we start five quarterbacks, where I had Derek Carr. I had to go ahead and make the drop, make the switch. If you listen to Drew Brees and talk about him spraining his AC joint, he said that the first week back, he didn't feel like he could go. And then suddenly, Saturday night, Sunday morning, he was, oh, I can play. And then he played and he was fine. So it's kind of up in the air what's going to happen with Carr. I've watched Carr for years and years and years. I watched him literally fracture his vertebrae and get pulled off the field. And the next week, he came back with the fracture not healed and got himself into the game and played the rest of the season.
Mhm.
So he's an intense guy that wants to be out there and will sacrifice himself to do it. So if there's any chance that he can play on Sunday, like if he gets up on Sunday morning and he throws the ball and there's very low limitations, Carr's going to be in there, but you got to act as if he's not gonna.
For sure. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo is in concussion protocol. People have been excited about Aiden O'Connell since he was drafted. He now may have a chance to start. Everything I've seen from him has been great. He could be a factor. Brendan, you got the lowdown on the Raiders. Who is starting
Yeah.
for them if Garoppolo is out, and can they be productive?
So my heart says start Aiden O'Connell. My brain says Josh McDaniels isn't going to do that. He's going to start Hoyer if Garoppolo
Hoyer,
can't
yeah.
go. I am among plenty of Raider fans, and the consensus in the fan base, hashtag Raider Nation, shout out, is put Aiden O'Connell out there. But I don't think McDaniels is going to do that. If Garoppolo can't go, Hoyer's going to be the guy. If Aiden O'Connell does wind up starting on Sunday, I would definitely recommend him being a stash everywhere in Dynasty. He was not drafted very much. Tended to go through 5 rounds of rookie drafts without being picked up. I had a habit of taking him with my final pick in Dynasty startups and in Dynasty rookie drafts, just in case, and stashing him on my taxi squad. But you do that if he actually gets some time. That's not Josh McDaniels' mo though. He's going to go with Hoyer. Hoyer's his guy.
Yeah, it's kind of sad because, the Raiders are 1-2. They're still right in the thick of that division. Maybe if they were 0-3, they might like maybe consider putting O'Connell in there. But honestly, I think they have a better shot of winning with O'Connell in there than Hoyer.
They do. O'Connell is a highly underrated quarterback. He reminds me a lot of the situation with Brock Purdy, um, where he was capable as a college quarterback, just completely under the radar. He doesn't have as much rushing upside as somebody like, say, Clayton Tune, but I mean, the guy made David Bell into an NFL player, and we've seen what David Bell has done at the NFL level. He's not great, but he made him a pretty high valued prospect. So O'Connell can sling it. He's good at quarterback.
Well, I mean, if Garoppolo does miss, let's just hope O'Connell makes it in there, and or maybe if Hoyer shits the bed in the first half, he might get an opportunity in the second half to show what he's got and maybe prove that he can maybe be a force in the future in a dynasty world.
Sure. And journeyman quarterbacks are journeyman quarterbacks for a reason. So
Yeah,
let's see if Aiden O'Connell is real or a journeyman.
exactly. Let's see how it goes. Now, Austin Eckler still his ankle. He was back to practice to start the week in limited fashion. A great sign for his ability this weekend, but the Chargers will be pushing Eckler to play. Joshua Kelly has shown us that he's been a pretty big disappointment to so far. To add to this, the loss of Mike Williams makes it even more important that Eckler's recovery is expedited. So keep an eye on Friday's practice report. I'm hearing rumblings throughout the league that potentially some of this injury is being plagued by some of that contract stuff that was happening with Eckler. He may be pushing his injury. Had it not been the case earlier in the offseason, he may be playing in this game a bit earlier, but we'll see what happens. What are your thoughts on that situation?
I I like Eckler and I want him to do well. He reminds me of Dalvin Cook, uh, Derrick Henry, Eckler. There was a list of about 4 running backs last year who I was out on a year too early. I said they hit the age wall and it's time to get out on them. And they all had huge years. Well, it looks like the chickens are coming home to roost with these guys, and it's actually starting to affect them. Uh, you did mispronounce UC Davis legend Joshua Kelly, so I'm going to let that slide. And he hasn't looked great, but neither have the Chargers unless Justin Herbert is trying to catch up. So when they're in garbage time or in catch up mode, they're fine. I got the two things from that Chargers game last week. Number one, it's better to be lucky than good, and number two, there are some teams that really just need to run the 2-minute offense for 60 minutes of the game. Why mess around if you know that your 2-minute offense is going to move the ball down the field? Why wait? Anyway, Eckler probably won't play this week. If he does, I know it's Austin Eckler, but I would be really hesitant to put him into your lineup. Give him another week. 2 weeks from now, he should be okay.
Perfect. Debo Samuel, ribs, knee, hasn't practiced yet this week. When one of any of the trio of Kittle, Debo, or Ayuk are out, it means wheels up for the ones that are playing. So Debo could sit out this week, which means big things for Kittle and, well, Brandon Ayuk, who was actually close to playing last week, probably would have played had the game been on Sunday. Looks likely he will play this week in a great matchup against a division rival, the Cardinals. So look for Ayuk to be a top 10 wide receiver if Debo sits and he actually plays. That's what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
give me Ayuk and 20 plus points every week that Tebow's out. Yeah, I mean, it might be a strategy for people when you go into redraft next year. If you're gonna take one, take the other
With
just
one
in
because
case.
yeah, because you're hedging your bet there, right? One
Right.
might be out and then your stock doubles in value. Not
Yeah.
a bad strategy, actually. Yeah. Jalen Waddle, the Dolphins didn't even need him and put up
Nope.
70 in week 3. But it's really great news that he cleared protocol today and will suit up in a huge match against the division rival, the Buffalo Bills. I seriously can't wait for this game. It should be the best game of the week. Waddle is coming out of a concussion, so he should slide back into his regular role without any sort of regression. So, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Game of the week. This is the game of the year at this point.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of these involving the Bills. There have been a couple of Bills Chiefs games that everybody, oh, this is the big matchup, whatever. To watch what the Dolphins did last week and to on offense, and to watch what the Bills did last week on defense, and have those two go up against each other this week could not have come at a better time. I had a Bills defense in the league that I had Sam Howell as quarterback, and I got zero point 0.6 points from Howell and 33 points from the Bills defense. And the way that I like to look at it is I got 10 points from the Bills defense and 23.6 from Sam Howell because he literally gave those points to the Bills defense.
Bills defense.
He earned those points, just not on offense for
Mm,
his team.
mm.
Anyway, anyway, yeah, this is unstoppable force meets immovable object. writ large, it's going to be the game that everybody needs to get ready to watch. Shout out to YouTube TV. If you don't have Sunday Ticket, get it so that you can watch this game, unless it's on like Monday night or Sunday night, whatever. But
Mhm.
regardless, this is the game to watch, and we might be talking about it for the next 14 weeks. So, uh, yeah, I'm glad Waddle's back, and imagine what a full complement of that Miami Dolphins offense can do. We'll see what happens with the Bills defense if they can sustain.
Either way, get your popcorn ready because it's going to be a good one.
Yes.
Um, Anthony Richardson looks like he's coming back. Minshew looked great leading the Colts to an impressive overtime win over the Ravens. Make no mistake about this, though. This is Richardson's team, and when healthy, he will be the starter. Richardson was back to practice to start the week and should be back in this one. Continue to start him if he's available. It would be nice, however, if the man could just, finish a game.
Yeah, that's one of the things, and we do play a lot of Dynasty here on dynastyprosfootball.com. And one of the things that we tend to watch is the difference in career length and injury history between quarterbacks who run and quarterbacks who don't. And the evidence shows that quarterbacks like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, guys that use their legs a lot, their careers tend, or their not their careers, but their years of productivity tend to be less than guys that don't run, like Derek Carr, Jared Goff. Um, Patrick Holmes might be one exception, but it seems like in every big game he's got some kind of injury. They put themselves in harm's way. Anthony Richardson did that out of the gate. Game one as a rookie. The difference is that Anthony Richardson is the size of Brian Urlacher. So he might be dealing with some concussion issues throughout his career, be dinged up quite a bit just because of the fact that he takes so much contact, which is the reason that he's going to be good in fantasy football, is because he uses his legs so much. So I did invest quite a bit in Anthony Richardson this year. He hasn't disappointed me as far as his time on the field, but his time off the field has been kind of very frustrating. It's good to see him back. I think he makes the Colts a lot better, and I can't wait for this one. He's back in every lineup on every team that I have him.
He better be because he's in mine as well. Yeah, absolutely. Bryce Young, ankle, as expected. The Panthers' offense looked way better with old timer Andy Dalton at the helm. The concerns of Bryce Young's durability in the NFL is a real concern. Young was back at practice to start the week and is on track to start in week 4. That's a real bummer, if you ask me. I was really enjoying the blast from the past with the Dalton to Thielen connection. I know fantasy managers liked it too. Made that whole offense a lot more fantasy relevant, but you know what? I still think there's some optimism going up against the Vikings this week for that offense. So we'll see what happens. But
Yeah,
I'm not exactly thrilled to have Bryce Young back in when I saw what Andy Dalton did to that to the fantasy football world. Anyway,
the best thing about Bryce Young coming back is that it caused a bunch of different fantasy owners to drop Jonathan Mingo, who I scooped up pretty quick. He was one of the lowest ranked wide receivers in rookie drafts for me, and dynasty startups. But I do like his potential as kind of like a Debo Samuel type. He's built pretty much the same way, and I like his future. We just need Bryce Young to kind of step up and get acclimated to the NFL game, which I don't think he is yet. Another spoiler coming up, but it was nice to see Andy Dalton and Adam Thielen, the Red Rocket.
mm-hmm.
Andy Dalton and Adam Thielen put something together last week, turned that Seattle game into a shootout, which absolutely sunk my starts and sits for the week
Mm-hmm.
because
I
it was
know.
supposed to be a low scoring game.
Yeah, yeah.
Damn it, Andy. But yeah, I'm kind of sad to see Dalton go back into the wings again. Bryce Young, he's got some learning to do, and he's not as good as CJ Stroud yet. So we'll wait for that day to come.
Well, you know what? You make a good point there. There's a lot of learning for him to do, and maybe he was able to sit back last week and watch a veteran go into the game and do something with that offense that, he hasn't done yet. Maybe it might push him to make those calls, maybe push the ball downfield a little bit more. Some of that might have been, coaching decision to, minimize a playbook for Bryce Young, but you know, let the kid do what he does best. He can throw the ball
Yeah.
downfield, hit those receivers. Let's let him sling it and see what he's got. What's the worst that could happen, right?
Right, and that's the thing about Carolina is that you know that they have a few weapons. Thielen is not cooked. We know that. Young can sling it. You have Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders in the backfield who aren't slouches, and the defense is pretty good. I mean, they did lose Shaq Thompson, but they should still be able to keep them in games unless they turn into a shootout like what
Hmm.
happened last week and they get behind in game script and have to catch up and all that stuff. So hopefully Young can get it together. Frank Reich can be the ballast and get the ship on the right track, which is a totally mixed metaphor, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, me too. Saquon Barkley is rumored to have a high ankle sprain, which normally takes a little bit longer to heal. Barkley will be limited all week leading up to the game. The Giants are a different team when Barkley is playing, and they will definitely need him to keep up with the Seattle Seahawks on prime time on Monday night. That's the problem. The game is on Monday, and there probably won't be much clarity until Monday. So if you plan on gambling and plan on playing Barkley, be sure to have him in your flex for one, and also have another option on Monday to plug in just in case. Perhaps JSN is on your waiver wire. Maybe pick him up just in case you need to plug him in there as an option.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem with injuries to guys like Saquon Barkley and Nick Chubb is that that's a huge draft capital investment. You were taking Saquon Barkley in the second round, possibly the third round. When that happens and you start letting the other running backs drift because you're confident that you have Saquon Barkley, waiver wire pickups become a much more important necessity. So if you weren't able to get Devon Achan, just not even saying a chain messes up the whole mouth. If you weren't able to get Devon Achan off your waiver wire, I mean, in deeper leagues, you're looking at guys that you really don't want to start, or guys, like Patrick Taylor from the Green Bay Packers who got put back on the practice squad, things like that. You have to go with Saquon because he's the guy that you invested in. So whether or not he is going to play on Monday, he's probably going to be in your lineup. The only thing that you can do is act as if he's not going to be. But we told you 2 weeks ago he's probably going to be back. He's got a long layoff between Thursday night and the next Monday
Hmm.
night. That should be enough time for him to get right. Um, I have Barkley on some teams, and he's in the lineup right now for all of those teams getting ready for Monday night.
Yeah, me too. I gotta gamble with it. You spent the draft capital on him and you gotta wing it. So yeah, just be prepared that there might need to be a replacement product there if need be. So if Jason is out there, look to pick him up. He may look for a breakout here as well.
Hopefully, Breed is on your waiver wire.
Yeah, for sure. Joe Burrow managed the game well on Monday, leaning on his best player, Jamar Chase, finally getting some play there. Look for much of the same as the Bengals head into their Week 4 match versus the Titans. So Burrow will play again. They need this. They need this game as well. Probably another clock management style game. So pretty boring. Not much to report there.
Yeah, and Joe Mixon's probably not going to do a whole lot on the ground. Last week, Jerome Ford was a boom in fantasy, but he only had 18 yards rushing. That Tennessee defense is legit. Chase just chose the 1 week that I played the Chase
Mm,
owner in my home league
of
to
course.
actually get right. I wish he went for another
Yeah.
dud, but what are you going to do? I always lose in that league on Monday night. I always have a lead until Monday night happens, and then whoever has people on Monday night, they beat me. It's a bad scene all around. But yeah, Joe Burrow, he was a sit 2 weeks ago. I was skeptical on him last week, but he showed up, and I mean his attitude. We're either going to go out there and lose, or I'm going to be able or I'm going to risk injury and see if I can help the team. It was a great attitude. It's what Joe Burr does, and he showed up, so that was nice.
Yeah, what an effort. What a soldier that guy is. So Gus Edwards left week 3 with a concussion. 75% of players that suffer a concussion miss at least one game. He did practice to start the week, but is not cleared protocol yet. This backfield has been a mess. If you're in deep league, I would look at maybe Keaton Mitchell, who is coming off the pup right away. If you like Devon A. Chan, you might like Keaton Mitchell. Mitchell is the 99th percentile in speed, has a 4.37 and has great burst. He can come in and become an immediate contributor. I am taking a shot in the leagues I have space on my bench and trying to pick up Keaton Mitchell wherever I can.
Yeah, we talked about Keaton Mitchell a few weeks ago. He's been a taxi squad stash for me. Pardon me, taxi squad or in IR stash for me. I like his speed profile. He can do a lot of things, especially if there's some holes that are opened up in Baltimore. Again, it's a backfield that I mostly stay away from just because of Lamar's intent to run so much. But yeah, I mean, if you invested in Gus Edwards and not Justice Hill, Keaton Mitchell is definitely somebody to look at. I say he's a stash everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and Dynasty too, because with Dobbins, you don't know if he's ever going to come back from another pretty catastrophic injury. So, like we don't know where that's headed now. So, Keaton
Yeah,
Mitchell, he's got that profile that the NFL is looking at right now. These small, young, fast guys that can get into space and use that. The NFL has switched the way it's calling games and stuff. So, it's making that easier for these smaller profile guys to be successful in this type of NFL. So, yeah, I like him. I like him a lot.
yeah. Historically, short of Darren Sproles, it hasn't worked out too well.
Mm,
But maybe it's a new era, just like with the tight ends.
yep.
Rip Luke Musgrave.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, it's nothing too serious with Musgrave because he was coming on big time. So the Chiefs better bring in some wide receivers to put because they just put Richie James on the IR on Sunday with a knee injury. With the James loss, this brings the Chiefs wide receiver room down to only 6 receivers.
Oh, the horror.
I know. I'm really hoping they can get Rice involved more because man, he's looked really good with the opportunity. He was kind of screwed out of a touchdown last week, which would have even made his stat line better. I like what I see with Rashi Rice and what what he's done in the Chiefs' offense as a rookie has impressed me quite a bit. And learning that offense and being thrown in there right away. Let's give him some more opportunity to see what he can do.
Yeah, hopefully he can show out. I think at this point with the Chiefs, the takeaway is if you don't have Travis Kelsey, there's not really another reliable. I'm not saying somebody's not going to give you a spike week. I'm not saying somebody's not going to, have a productive game, but there's nobody who's reliable in that offense. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelsey, that's it. Hopefully, Rashee Rice can step up and start to be that guy. But you look down the list. Justin Watson is nice. Marquez Valdez Scantling is nice sometimes. I mean, they're just loaded with guys who it reminds me of a basketball team that has role players that are good in certain situations, and they'll have a good night and assist in a win, but they're not guys that are going to go out and every week like Tyreek Hill score you 20 points. They're just not going to have that, and hopefully Rice can establish himself as that guy to be a compliment to Kelsey, but when you look at the Chiefs, they don't really need it either. So
Mm-mm.
that's not really a great situation for taking pass catchers.
Yeah, we what we see is what we get at this point. I think. I think what we see is not going to change much. We're going to see a revolution, a rotation of guys in and out of that, depending on how the defenses are playing. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and everybody looks at Mahomes and goes, hey, there's gotta be somebody who
Hmm.
can do that. But maybe there's not. Maybe there
Yeah,
doesn't have to be somebody that does that.
exactly. So we are at this next stage here where we call last week's Studley and Dudley calls. You want to lead us into this, there, Brendan?
Studleys and Dudleys. All right. So coming off a really horrifying week calling starts and sits, let's go ahead and just give me a feel good moment for a second. And last week in this space, I told you start Raheem Mostert. What did Raheem Mostert do? He went out and he got your team, 43 points in PPR? And he wasn't even the best player on his team in that backfield. Are you kidding me? But Mostert, as I like to say, had a great week. I said last week on the podcast that he's regarded as one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. He just needs to stay healthy, a lot like Rashad Penny had been throughout his career. Raheem Mostert, that was my Studley for the week, and I'm proud as hell.
Yeah. So what we're doing here in this section is we're going to be just reflecting on last week's starts and sits because we want to take ownership over our calls. So we are actually going to call ourselves out on our bad calls as well. Like last week, I told you all to start Hunter Henry, who
Mm.
was 2 for 17 in that game. All signs pointed him in that direction, but it just wasn't a good call because he didn't produce, and I have to take ownership over that. So, the 5 targets he's got, had he maybe converted 2 more of those, we would be talking differently right now, but we're not. So, I take ownership. I let you guys to believe that Hunter Henry was a good start.
Well, good, because I listened to you, Mike, and I started Hunter Henry in all the leagues that I picked him up on waivers. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your
Yeah,
fault. What we stress here is good process. Sometimes
yeah.
good process equals bad results. Um, Jordan Love might not have been the best call to start this week, but he just scored a rushing touchdown, so that's nice. So you look at what's likely to happen, and the way that history had presented itself this year. Hunter Henry was a good call, and some of us listened to Mike, and it just didn't
Mhm.
work out. He was a Dudley, but that's okay because Mike gave you another start at tight end or stream. And what happened there, Mike?
That was a Studley call because I told you all to start Sam Laporta last week, who had a monster
Woo!
game. Did he ever? Laporta went 8 for 84 and a touchdown. Now he is rising up the dynasty rankings right now. Like a lot of people have him as a top 4 dynasty tight end after last week, and it's not like I have him ranked up there too. So Sam Laporta was my Dudley call last week.
Yeah. And this is something that we've been pounding all off season, leading into the season and through the last couple weeks. It's a new era for tight ends. They're not tight ends anymore. They're big slot receivers. And Sam Laporta is leading the charge at this point. We thought Dalton Kincaid was going to do well. Luke Musgrave, those kinds of guys coming in as rookies that rookie tight ends weren't reliable before. But Sam Laporta is real. Which leads me to my Dudley. I don't know why it leads me to that because
Laporta was a Studley, but we
any,
got to take
any
ownership, right?
anyway, my Dudley is Jerome Ford. Last week in this space, I said give Jerome Ford another week. And I was half right, but I wasn't fully right. He had 18 yards rushing, which was fine, but he still wound up high in the running back rankings for the week because of receptions. Because although you can't run the ball against the Tennessee Titans with your running backs, you sure can throw to them. And Jerome Ford made me look bad. So look for that coming up later on in this podcast.
All right. So, you know what? We've had some good calls, some bad calls, and now we're going to move on because you know what? As we get through the season, we hope and we aspire to get better with these calls because the start of the year is tough to project. And, it's only going to get better from here on out. So, let's get into
Yes.
our starts this week. Okay, Brandon, who's your first start?
Well, all these starts, I'm gonna say this. All these starts are gonna hit this week. So my first start is Justin Fields. I'm not a big Justin Fields guy, and he's been down bad. But if you think about it and recall last year, it took him a while to get going. It wasn't until week 6 that he actually broke into the top 12. This year, he's seemingly been held back by play calling that's been pretty bad. And he's trying to adjust his game and become a pocket passer, which the data shows he's not good at, and it hasn't worked. But the perfect remedy for this is the Denver Broncos. Denver has allowed the second most points to fantasy quarterbacks this season. The second most. They're ranked 31st. Second most points. And that includes facing Jimmy Garoppolo and Sam Howell. But that's not all. Because Fields is good at rushing the ball, and Denver has allowed the most points on the ground. They're 32nd against running backs. Part of that was the Dolphins. I'll give you that. But Denver let them do that. So expect Justin to have a Fields day.
I love the call. I just
What about the
hope that
pun?
yeah, I love it all. It all came together beautifully. It was like poetry in motion. We all know that. But the Bears offense is not poetry in motion, and we know that as well. So hopefully Matt Eberflus can get Fields running the ball like he did after week 6 last year. Like, I mean, the passing thing, he needs to evolve in that, but you know, you can't veer off of what made him successful, and that is running the ball. Let's get him running the ball. This is the week to get going, and all my Fields and DJ Moore shares are begging you to please make it happen this week. So let's go. So, with my first start of the week, I'm going with Tank Dell versus the Steelers. In the past 2 weeks, Tank Dell has exploded for 12 receptions for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tank is not a gadget player. His snap share is increasing each week. He had an 84% route participation in week 2. CJ Stroud asked for the Texans to draft Tank Dell, and they are clearly gaining chemistry. Stroud has looked like a stud to start this year. So the Texans are slinging the ball, and Dell has been one of the main beneficiaries. Dell has a 22% target share in the last 2 games, and he's emerging as one of the top options in this Texan team. I'm looking for Dell to continue his emergence against the Steelers this week, who gave up a monster game last week to Devontae Adams.
Yes, and I will say Tank Dell is not Devontae Adams. And
No.
also, I don't want Tank eating into my Nico Collins shares. However, my next start is Marvin Mims. I hate tabbing rookie wide receivers in the first half of the season, let alone the first quarter of the season. And look at us. We're putting
Mm-hmm.
rookie wide receivers in these start lists. But look at what Mims has become in just 3 weeks. He was wide receiver 18 in week 2 on 2 targets. 2. He was wide receiver 23 in week 3. That's in your wide receiver 2 spot or flex at worst. And that's with Judy and Sutton on the field. So it's not like the presence of those guys is taking anything away from him. His targets increased to 5 last week. Now his yards per target came back to earth from 56 to 14, and his yards per catch was halved. But that just means he's developing Russ's trust. And with the current state of the Broncos, this game could turn into a real shootout or create a negative game script where Russ is closing his eyes and chucking it, which is what Russ does best. And if he trusts Marvin Mims, he's going to be throwing that ball to Marvin Mims, who's a deep threat and he's got hands. So he was Sean Payton's handpicked guy, moved up in the draft to get him. Marvin Mims is going to be for real, and this week he's going to have a big week, I think.
I love Marvin Mims. I love this call. I'm going to pull some stats here. So Broncos longest gains of 2023, and this is based off of Scott Barrett's from Fantasy Points. So I'm going to give him some credit on this. So the the longest gains, top 10 here. Okay, so number 10, Marvin Mims. Okay, 25 yards. Number 9, Marvin Mims, 20 yards. Number 8, Marvin Mims, 30 yards. Number 7, Marvin Mims, 38 yards. Number 6, Marvin Mims, 65 yards. Sorry, 45 yards. Number 5, Jerry Jeudy with 46. Number 4 was Brandon Johnson at 50. Number 3, Marvin Mims, 53 yards. Number 2, Marvin Mims, 60 yards. Then number 1 was Marvin Mims with 99 yards. So 8 out of the top 10 plays uh, from, any sort of advantage point is Marvin Mims. So I'm in on Marvin Mims. Like, I mean, that says it all.
Yeah, and you could say eight out of nine because that one to Brandon Johnson was absolutely a prayer. so,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
the football gods came down and blessed Brandon Johnson with that catch. Shouldn't have happened, but it did. So you could really say that eight of the nine best
Yeah,
completions for Russell Wilson were to Mims. At some point he's got to get more targets,
yeah.
and he's for real, folks.
But that was including special teams too as well. So just so you know, though, that was included like punt returns and kickoff returns as well, because Mims is a special teamer, and if he could only get off of the special teams and not be so valuable, maybe those targets would get up there. But they're actually relying on him quite a bit back there, which is unfortunate because that is capping his ceiling as a wide receiver at this stage.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we don't look to rookie wide receivers at the beginning of the season. It takes them some time to show. Look at what he's doing now. Get him the freaking ball.
Let's do it. Now, Tutu Atwell is my next start. The Colts have a good run defense, but their secondary has been a lot to be desired, giving up an average of 250 passing yards per game. Atwell has quietly become the wide receiver 14 after 3 weeks. The Rams team has shocked everyone on how effective they have been on offense to start this year. Atwell is averaging 8.7 targets per game with 82 yards per game as well. So that is a lot of receiving yards, earning 21% target share, and I can't see that slowing down until at least Cooper Cup comes back into the lineup. I'm starting Tutu Atwell over guys like Garrett Wilson, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, and Jerry Jeudy this week. These small, young, fast players are doing amazing things in space, and they are getting into. So, they're showing great value, and this new evolution of NFL football is pretty exciting to see with these young, fast players.
Yeah, and I love the attitude and I love the approach, but let's put a measured effect on it. You have to do it when you're looking at guys who are innovators in the league right now, like Mike McDaniel and Sean McVay. You can't do it with if the head coach of the team that you're starting a guy from is Frank Reich or Ron Rivera or somebody who's more of an old school NFL head coach. These young innovators, they're making changes in the way that the game is played, and it's playing right into the hands of guys like Tank Dell, Tutu Atwell, Puka Nakua to a certain extent, Devin Achan. I'll never get that right. But yeah, you have to look for innovators when you're, and it just adds another dimension of what we're looking at when we're roster building is who the actual head coach is, because you can't
Hmm.
have somebody old school. It's almost like they have to come from that old Washington Redskins. Um, that's what they used to be called. Coaching tree with Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel is derivative of that. The LaFleurs, these guys, they're the ones who are making changes and giving opportunities for
Hmm.
guys to step up who traditionally wouldn't have had a role.
Yeah, great point. Really good point. All right, what's your next start?
All right. I don't know if anybody in here is into sailing, but uh, you got to take a hard tack when the wind shifts right. And so this week I'm starting Jerome Ford. Last week I said wait, and I was very, very, very wrong. Maybe I was half right. Like I said, he did only rush for 18 yards on 10 carries, which at 1.8 yards per carry, that's less than the 2.7 that Tennessee had been allowing. So he didn't even reach the reason that is said to sit him. He didn't even get to that point. His
Hmm.
points came through the air. He got a goal line touch. But here's the thing: what are the metrics that we look for in a top fantasy back? We look for goal line work and we look for receiving targets, right? So that's what Jerome Ford is going to give you. The Cleveland Browns know that that's what they're going to give him or what he's going to give them. So this week, it's wheels up on Ford. Let's go. Hopefully, you invested in him as soon as the Chubb injury happened, and he's good for the rest of the year.
Yep, he definitely showed last week why he can emerge in that backfield over the guys that are competing with him. So yes, I agree. Adam Thielen versus the Vikings with a combined age of 68. Andy Dalton and Adam Thielen looked like they were in their 20s last week against the Seahawks. Thielen was on fire, earning 14 targets for 11 receptions and 145 yards and a touchdown. After a lackluster week one, Thielen is averaging 12 targets in his last two games, and now he gets his revenge game against the Vikings, who opted to go younger this offseason by letting Thielen walk in free agency. Now Thielen is coming off a huge game, is going up against this Viking defense that just gave up 215 yards to Keenan Allen. No matter who is starting for Carolina at quarterback, look for them to pepper Thielen with targets against his old team. I do prefer him if Dalton is the starter, but he should still have a great showing, even if Young is starting in this one.
We hope. And one of the things that reminds me of Keenan Allen when I watch Adam Thielen is the fact that they both can play out of the slot, they both can play on the outside, but they're possession receivers. So when you need a first down on third and medium to long, you can throw the ball to Adam Thielen and he's going to pull it out of the air the same as Keenan Allen. So it's a good analogy to look at what Keenan Allen did last week with his 215 yards receiving in a game where Mike Williams put up over 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
The Vikings are going to allow that to happen. Why not Thielen? Let's go.
All right, let's get into the sits.
All right. So guys that we're looking at to not really do much if you put them in your lineup. So put them on your bench, look for a waiver wire pickup, look for a substitute, something. You don't want to have these. My first one is Breece Hall. Now, I had really, really huge hopes for Breece. Last year before the injury, he looked like one of the top 5 backs that we've seen in the last 10 years. I didn't listen when people tried to say that it might take some time for him to get back from his injury. And I bought in when in week 1 he finishes the RB11. I was like, he's back. And that was also with Zach Wilson because he did that after Rodgers left the game. But the Bills had game planned for Rodgers and his injury threw them off, and Hall was able to do what he did. Since that game, defenses have been able to plan to shut down the run game and take Garrett Wilson out of the picture as best that they can because Zach Wilson isn't going to beat anybody with his arm or his brain. And that's bad news for Hall, especially if he's not 100% still, and especially since they're playing the Chiefs, who are the 4th ranked against running backs. Apart from good games from Montgomery and Gibbs in week 1, the Chiefs haven't allowed anybody to get going. Unfortunately and sadly, I am now in the wait on Breece camp. Let him spike and have a 20-plus point game before you put him back into your lineups.
Yeah, it's sad. It really is. But you know what? There is one encouraging sign there is that his snap share is rising right now. And it has been since the start of the year. I just don't think this is the game for him to explode. Maybe next week we'll see what happens. And that's the dog and Duke coming out, right? So, hopefully the dog and Breece Hall will come out. Probably not this week though. So I agree with that. So my first sit is Joe Mixon versus the Tennessee Titans. Like Brennan had mentioned earlier, the Tennessee Titans are a formidable run defense. After a do or die game on Monday night, a beat up Joe Burrow and the Bengals defeated a surprising Rams team on Monday to keep their Super Bowl hopes alive. Because we all know the Bengals would have been in a big trouble had they lost. We saw life from, Jamar Chase finally for the first time this year, and Joe Mixon also poked out with a touchdown. Now Mixon and the Bengals look to build off their Monday night momentum against the Titans, a team that looks completely lost on offense. The only bright spot I see is their run defense, who rank fourth in the league versus the run, only giving up 69 yards per game on the ground. Mixon has not been particularly effective with his opportunities, ranking 24th with 4 yards per carry on average. Mixon will need a big play or hit pay dirt in order to pay off in this one. So I'm going to sit him if I can.
Yeah, and part of me wishes that my opponent in the fishbowl last week sat him, but ultimately it didn't matter. I was watching Monday Night Football. I was done with points. My opponent had Mixon and a couple of Rams. I want to say Stafford and Kyron Williams. At the end of the game, Mixon got to the point where I was like 0.7 down, and if Mixon got another touch,
Yeah.
I was toast. And that was when they decided to start kneeling, and I couldn't
Yeah.
have been happier. Uh,
Yeah.
so I wish that my opponent had Mixon this week, but it was not to be. I do want to go ahead and make a retroactive start. Start David Montgomery this week.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
he
No
just
kidding.
scored his third touchdown of the night. I think
Lovely.
the 17 that Jamal Williams scored last week, I think Montgomery might beat that, even after missing games.
Yeah. It's crazy.
All right, my next sit is going to be QJ Quentin Johnston. So we talked about him earlier, and do you remember when I said before that I hate tabbing rookie wide receivers? Yeah, he's why. Despite the injury to Mike Williams, he's still a wait and see for fantasy relevance. We're only in week 4. Keenan is the target hog. Keenan is the one that had 215 yards receiving last week. Keenan torches the Raiders consistently, which is what I'm looking at going into this week. And the Chargers won't need much offense in this game because the
Mm-mm.
Raiders are bad. So the points that they will get will not come from Quentin Johnston. They're going to come from Keenan Allen. They're going to come from Joshua Kelly. I don't see QJ doing much in this game. He's just not ready. So if you have him and you were like, hey, I can start him now because Mike Williams is hurt, don't. He's not going to do it.
All right. I won't. Absolutely not. Okay. So Rashad White versus the Saints. After putting up a dud against a tough run defense in the Eagles, Rashad White is up against another tough run defense this week in the Saints. The Saints ranked 10th against the run this year, giving up a stingy 99 yards per game on the ground. With Camaro's return and Garoppolo banged up, sorry, Carr banged up, I'm expecting the Saints to try and control the clock in a slow paced game. This game is projected as one of the lowest scoring games of the week, and I do see there being I don't see there being any very many scoring opportunities. When we consider how ineffective White has been as a rusher, it doesn't look good for White this week. White's 3.1 yards per carry ranks 43rd in the league. Hopefully you have another option on your bench because I can easily see this being a repeat performance for White this week. See
Yeah.
what I did there with the
And
quarterbacks?
I invested in White in Dynasty last year, hoping that he could be an all around back, and he was behind Uncle Lenny. He has been a talented running back. The problem is that Tampa Bay offensive line is really, really bad. There's a lot of plays where you see Rashad White, and as soon as he gets the ball, there are no holes for him to run to. So I understand that he's not very efficient, but he also has nowhere to go. Most of his points at this point in his career with the line that he's running behind are going to come from being able to catch the ball, which he's totally capable of. But that Saints defense is a monster defense. They were my hope for Derek Carr to get far this year because all he's needed in his career is a defense that could finish in the top 10 and not the bottom 25. So, yeah, that's a good set. I wouldn't be starting Rashad White this week either.
All right, what do you got next there?
So, all you guys who picked up Mac Jones off waivers and redraft or drafted him as your QB3 in Superflex, you were super happy after week 1. And after 3 weeks, he's QB12. But that's a mirage. You should be happy with his week 1 performance, but go with a different option this week. The Patriots are at Dallas this week, and they're going to
Mhm.
make Max Day very uncomfortable. Dallas is ranked 8th in fantasy points to quarterbacks. They're not happy about losing to Arizona. And Mac Jones doesn't run like Josh Dobbs or Daniel Jones. And I don't think Mike McCarthy is as good an offensive coordinator or game planner as Arizona's offensive coordinator. He may be he may be the QB12 at the moment, but he's finished as low as QB2 in Superflex the last 2 weeks. He's not going to get any better, and his QB2 finish in week 1 was the fluke. Sit
Yeah,
Mac Jones.
I agree. And after that cheap shot he did on Sauce Gardner, what a dirty player. Um, Man, he's even lucky he's even playing in this game, in my opinion. So yeah, let's sit him based off principle, but let's sit him based off the situation too.
Yeah, Kyle, the frat guy, calls it a sack tap. Everybody else calls it a cheap shot.
Exactly. Let's do it. Okay, so my last sit of the week is Dak Prescott versus the Patriots. I guess we're having a quarterback battle in this one. Um, the Cowboys were brought back down to earth after coming out of the gate blazing in week 3 when they put up an absolute dud against the surprising Cardinals. Dak was being drafted as a low end QB1 and is currently QB 22 in 6 point scoring. He has been a liability in fantasy lineups, barely startable in 2 QB leagues. Now he gets the Patriots, who are able to pretty much shut down 2 top tier quarterbacks in Tua Tungavaloa and Jalen Hurts. So there surely is better options on the waiver wire in 1 quarterback leagues. Most likely you'll be stuck starting him in Superflex, but my Pollard and Lamb shares were hurting after last week, and I am probably looking at more of the same stuff heading into week 4.
Yeah, and not to mention Rico Dowdle vulturing a touchdown.
Tuh, yeah.
So I can't sit Dak Prescott this week. I can't do it, Mike, because I have no Dak Prescott shares. Oh, okay,
Oh, boom. Okay, well, good for you. I don't
all
have
right,
any either, but I wouldn't be starting if I did.
right,
All
right.
right, let's get into some streamers, Brennan. That's
Yeah,
your
let's
segment.
stream.
Let's do
Okay,
it.
so you're looking around, you've got a defense special teams in your lineup, and you're like, they're just not going to do it this week. You go to the waiver wire, and who are you taking? I'm going to tell you, you take the Cincinnati Bengals defense. They've been okay so far, but this is a week that they're coming off shutting down the high production Rams, and they get the low production Titans. You know how many times Cleveland sacked Ryan Tannehill last week? 5 times. They allowed
Mm-hmm.
130 total yards to Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and Ty Spears combined. That's what Cleveland did to Tennessee. Tennessee is a shambles, and the Bengals, who had 6 sacks last week, are going to take advantage of the Tennessee Titans. So if you're looking for a defense streamer, go grab the Cincinnati Bengals. They might not get 6 sacks this week, but they're going to get a few, and they're going to wind up in the top 12 in defenses, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah, you know what? That was probably the only streamer option that I looked at that I didn't actually like throw up in my mouth and like regurgitate because man, it's been slim picking. So I was scavenging the line looking for a good defense and I came up with maybe a decent one. We'll have to look. I'm not putting all my eggs in this basket by no means, but I'm gonna go with the Chargers against the Raiders. Um, they the 25th ranked defense is the Chargers. They are a team that has potential to sneak in the top 12. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. They're playing the Raiders. The Raiders could be without Garoppolo. So Brian Hoyer, potentially Aiden O'Connell, like we talked about earlier, could have a shot in this game. But this is regular season, so if you're starting a rookie against a starting NFL defense, there could be a lot of pressure coming at them. And they sacked Kirk Cousins 4 times last week, so I'm looking for the Chargers to get pressure early, whether it's against a banged up Garoppolo or a veteran in Hoyer or a rookie in Aiden O'Connell. So that's kind of my dart throw this week. Hoping that it might hit.
Yeah, and that kind of highlights one of the dangers of not drafting the 49ers or the Bills or somebody like that in a redraft league and relying on being streamers. What you want to look for is good matchups. And the Chargers, let's be honest, they've been an absolute sieve on defense, giving up a ton of points every week.
Mhm.
That's not going to happen this week against the Raiders. I'm coming to you live on tape from Allegiant Stadium, as you can see in the background. This is where it's not where I podcast from, but as a as a Raiders fan, I can tell you the the way that the Tennessee Titans I just said were a shambles. The Raiders are even worse off right now. Josh McDaniels is terrible. He's lost the locker room. They have two weapons on offense and two weapons on defense, and that's the entirety of their team. So when it comes to being able to shut them down, it's basically stack the box and bracket Devontae Adams. Adams may beat you, but Josh Jacobs probably won't if that's the case. And they're going to have some struggles with the Chargers this week, and it's not going to be pretty for me to watch.
All right. Well, yeah. Who knows? It's the NFL and it's streaming defenses in a week that there's not many good matchups. So hopefully that one
Yeah.
sticks. We'll see what happens. So what do you
Now,
got for tight ends?
the other position that we tend to stream is tight end, and this one is kind of sketchy. So I'm going to tell you, whichever of the two of the Washington Commanders tight ends starts this week, play him. So Logan Thomas got banged up a couple weeks ago with a concussion. If he plays, start him. If it's Cole Turner, start him. Thomas finishes the tight end 11 and then the tight end 10 before missing the blowout in Buffalo. I don't even know if it was there, with a concussion that he suffered against Denver. If he's fully back, he'll be a good play. Turner, on the other hand, had a rough day against the Bills, but he led the Commanders in targets that on Sunday, and everybody had a rough day against the Bills. Sam Howell couldn't get out of anything to save his life. This week, Washington faces the Eagles. The Eagles have given up 16.6 points to Hunter Henry. Woo pig! As he turned in a tight end one performance. The next week, they allowed 25 points to TJ Hawkinson as he finishes the tight end one. So the Eagles gave up tight end one performances in consecutive weeks. They were fine against Baker Mayfield, but that was Baker Mayfield returning to earth. One of my Dudleys, I said start Kate Otten, and for some reason Baker couldn't find him. He might need glasses or something. Thomas or Turner, Logan Thomas or Cole Turner probably won't finish as tight end one this week. But whichever of the two it is, they'll be fine against Philly. Pick them both up. Whichever one is playing, start them.
Yeah, good call. Now, my tight end streamer is a little bit more conservative than Brandon's was. A little bit more inside the box. Currently, the tight end 14 headed into week 4. The Bills will need all their weapons, and I think this will be the game that they unleash Dalton Kincaid. This game should be a shootout, and Kincaid should be a key piece in this game. Playing the big slot role, the Bills will need to get all their pass catchers involved to keep pace with the unstoppable Dolphins offense. Miami has given up 2 touchdowns to tight ends in 2 games this year, so I'm looking for another tight end touchdown in this one. Hopefully it's Kincaid and not Dawson Knox that finds the pay dirt this week.
Yeah, that situation reminds me a lot of guys who are in running back situations like Ramondre Stevenson and Zeke Elliott were supposed to be, or Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. A lot of times you'll hear people say, "This running back is good between the 20s, and this is the goal line option."
Mm-hmm.
That's what the Bills tight end situation makes me think of, is Kincaid lining up as a big slot tight end, big slot receiver, and between the 20s, he's fine. But Josh Allen still relies on Dawson Knox as his red zone target, his end zone target when they get close. It's not that it's not going to happen. It's just going to be a matter of time before Dalton Kincaid completely takes over, because talent wins in the NFL. Talent over situation always in Dynasty, and hopefully this is Kincaid's breakout. It's they're going to need him. They're going to need
Hmm.
everybody. And maybe Dawson Knox scores a touchdown or two, but that doesn't mean that Kincaid can't score his own or a couple for himself. So I like that play too.
Awesome. So, well, thanks everybody for joining us for the weekend warm up for the Dynasty Pros Football Network. Brendan and I will be leading you into the weekend every week this season for going over everything you need to know headed into the weekend. Thanks everybody for the support. This show is growing and we appreciate all of it. So please continue to like and share. It means the world to us. Brandon, you want to remind everybody where they can find you and your content?
I sure do. I'm at Big Boned FFB on Twitter. Find my Substack link in my profile. Also, you can go to at Big Boned FFB on YouTube. Every Monday night, I'm doing a Monday Meltdown podcast with special guests watching the Monday Night Football game. I have a whole show structure that's set up to review the weekend, and I'd love to have you in there. I'd love to have you commenting on this video. Like it, share it, comment, and hit that bell so you'll get a notification when we're up.
Absolutely. And you can find me at FF Canuck 99 on Twitter, and then all my Dynasty Pros content on dynastypros.com. Well, that's the end of the weekend warm up heading into week 4. Thanks, everybody. We hope you have a great weekend of fantasy football and enjoy the games.
I hope you all win.